Hi friends, I'm Dane, and I have been living and working in Australia for this past year on my first working holiday visa. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my thoughts on moving to Australia, what you can expect on the channel this year, and where I've been the last year. One of my most popular videos on YouTube has been about moving to Australia. And the big question I get is, what happened next? I spent 6 months living in Sydney and then I moved to a place called Wollongong. Locals call it the Gong. And this is it. Pretty cool. I think I speak for most people when I say you move to Australia to have that beachy lifestyle, and that is exactly what I did. I was living in Sydney for like 6 months, living in the city, in the CBD, and whilst it was amazing, I did find it a bit too much at times. It was very expensive, it was very busy, and I was exhausted all of the time. First things first, we are in Australia, so it'd be rude not to go for a swim. Not really dressed for a swim right now though. Okay, I didn't plan on getting that wet, but the waves are pretty wild. So this is Wollongong, and in case you've never heard of the place called Wollongong, I'd never heard of a city called Wollongong until I moved to Wollongong. So Wollongong is about 100 kilometers south of Sydney. It's like an hour on the train, it's perfect. Like if I want my Sydney fix, I can head on the train there. So we have a lighthouse here, another lighthouse there. We have a coast full of beautiful, beautiful towns with rock pools, unreal beaches. And one of my favorite parts is this beautiful escarpment. It's just like the perfect backdrop for like where you want to live. I pretty much spend my mornings at the beach. If I don't go to the beach in the morning or the afternoon, I seriously feel like there's something wrong with me. One of my main reasons for moving to Australia was to live that relaxed beach lifestyle. And Wollongong certainly hits the spot for me. I mean, I pretty much come to the beach every day. I'm in the ocean and I just feel so connected to like the surroundings and nature. And I love it. I'm so much more happier here. Living here has given me a chance to slow down and enjoy the simpler things in life. I don't feel the need to be traveling full time right now, so I'm basing myself here between trips. I think life is all about chapters. Living a slower life in Wollongong is my current chapter, and I don't have the urge to skip any pages right now. Delicious. This is a very different type of video to what I would normally make, but I have had so many comments on like my moving to Australia videos, like what did you do next? Because really, I didn't really post anything about my life in Sydney. Let me quickly rewind to get you guys up to speed on my story. I'm going to tell you my travel and moving to Australia story in 1 minute, so let's go. 2018, I took my first backpacking trip to Thailand, realized I wanted to travel the world, set a date for the 1st of January 2020. I was going to travel the world for a year and then move to Australia on a working holiday visa. Went to America, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, Singapore. COVID happened, went home for a year, then saved a ton of money, left again in July 2021, traveled Eastern Europe, a bit of Africa, a bit of Central America, a bit of America, and then I got to the point where I was tired and feeling a bit burnt out of travel, and I was like, hey, why don't I move to Australia? I've always wanted to do that. So I applied for a visa, it took 4 months, and just when I was about to book my flight back to London, I get an email from the Australian immigration to say, ding, your working holiday visa has been approved. You can now move to Australia. So instead of booking my flight back to London, I changed it and I booked a flight to Sydney. I landed in Sydney at the end of March of 2022. I spent 6 months living and working in Sydney. I worked in a non-for-profit and I was actually able to use that to get my 88 days specified work. I'm currently just starting my 2nd year working holiday visa. However, I've really not done a great job at traveling Australia. February 2020, I spent 6 weeks going from Cairns down to Melbourne. I've done the infamous East Coast trip, so I wasn't too fussed about that. In the last year alone, I have traveled to many places that have not been Australia. Let me just go back a little bit more. So, after landing in Australia in March 2020, I just wanted to chill for a few months, and it was perfect because the Australian La Nina was in full swing, so it pretty much rained for like 6 months. However, I did squeeze in a few trips to the Blue Mountains. We went to tropical North Queensland and a lot of places in New South Wales, which is where I live. Then I went to Cambodia and Vietnam for 5 weeks in November. I got back in December. 6 weeks later, I jumped on a plane to London to surprise my family. I then went to Madeira, Morocco, back to Portugal, and then I went back to England. I flew back to Sydney and then flew back to see my family who live on the west coast of Australia. And I spent 3 weeks traveling Western Australia, and it was absolutely beautiful. Hopefully that's a good quick little recap of my last year. I feel like coming to Australia, I didn't expect any of this to happen. I booked a one-way flight to Sydney. I think I was in Mexico at the time, and I didn't know what was gonna happen. I remember moving here, I was very nervous, very normal to feel like that. My biggest piece of advice if you're gonna move to Australia is just do it, book the flight, book the visa. Actually book the visa first, and then once you've got the visa, book the flight. But just see what happens. Like, I never knew any of this stuff was gonna happen. I didn't know that I was gonna fall in love, set up a business, move to this cool town called Wollongong. Like, anything can happen. And that's why I feel like these adventures are so important. Now, you probably could go back on my videos and see that I've traveled extensively to a lot of countries over the last years. Australia is such a big country, and it's such an expensive country that you really can't just come here for a few months. I think the best thing to do is pick somewhere really cool to live and just do adventures from there. So that is what I'm doing. I also wanted to quickly say I am so sorry for not posting for the past 3 weeks. After getting back from my trip from Morocco and Western Australia, I've been so busy and so tired, and unfortunately, I just haven't been able to keep up with YouTube. But I have so many exciting videos to share with you guys over the next few months. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe down below. Things that have happened to me since I moved to Australia. Firstly, I just had the best year of my life. I had the perfect balance between working, chilling, and exploring, which is great. Made some friends, fell in love, set up a business. Feel like if I'd gone back to England, I probably wouldn't have done that. I hope that these videos inspire you guys to move to Australia, because honestly, like, it's been such an amazing experience for me. Pretty much what I'm trying to say is, if you don't do it, you don't know what could happen. Your life could change forever because you made the brave, courageous decision to move to the other side of the world. But saying that, it's not all plain sailing, so I'm about to share with you the advantages and disadvantages that I've noticed about living in Australia. So this is the part of the video where I tell you exactly what it's like to live in Australia. Recently, I've really thought about my life here and how lucky I've been. What's made me think about that is when I went to England recently, I just noticed that people weren't as happy. Like, everyone in Australia is really laid back, really happy. And I think the biggest reason why is because the sky is blue every single day. I spend every day at the beach, morning and afternoon. I know not everyone does that in Australia, but like, a high percentage of people in Australia live on the East Coast. Basically, a lot of Australians live near the beach, therefore they feel more laid back, more relaxed, and they just generally have a high quality of life. When I went back to England recently, I just felt like I was on like this happy high, like, I'm living in Australia, I'm like really loving my life at the moment. And then I go back home and like everyone's moaning about like the cost of living, it's cold, it's, you know, I didn't see the sun, I literally didn't see the sun once when I was in England. That's crazy. Now, I haven't lived in England for a few years now, so I feel like I can really see a difference between myself and people that live in England. I don't quite know what I'm trying to say here. All I'm trying to say is you can live a better quality of life. And for you, that might be in Australia. That's what it's been like for me. After living here for a year, I've definitely got a good perspective on what it's like to migrate from one country to another. So I've put a list together of the pros and cons, because although I'm sitting here saying to you, yes, it's amazing to live in Australia and my working holiday visa has been amazing, there are some disadvantages to living in Australia. So I made a little list. I'm gonna go through the cons first and then we'll end on the pros because, you know, that's just better. First disadvantage of living in Australia, it's so far away from everything and flights are really expensive to go anywhere. Next thing is you have to think about your future. Most people that come here on a working holiday visa have to think to themselves, oh God, I really love it. How can I stay here longer? So it's having to consider your future and what visa options you're going to pursue. Next up, the food quality isn't that great and it's really expensive. So that brings me to the cost of living. Everything is more expensive, but you do get paid a bit more. Everything closes early, so cafes and coffee shops close at like 2 to 3. Restaurants, generally, I've never been out to eat in a restaurant past like 8 or 9 o'clock. Although everything closes early, everything opens early, so you can actually go and get a coffee at like 5 a.m, 6 a.m, be at the beach like I was this morning, 6 a.m, perfect. The biggest disadvantage for me living in Australia is the impact it has on the relationships with my friends and family. Now, it's quite a significant time difference. It's like 10 or 11 hours. So pretty much all my friends and family are awake when I'm asleep. I'm awake when they're asleep. So it makes it really hard to contact each other. And as a result of me living on the other side of the world, I simply just don't talk to my friends and family as much, which is really sad. I don't like that. I wish I could bring all my friends and family to Australia. So that for me is the biggest disadvantage of living in Australia. Saying all of these things, there are a lot of pros, so I'm going to tell you this now. First up, you see the sun every day, which in turn makes your mental health better. Next thing is better quality of life. Unemployment rates are low and wages are high. There are tons of beautiful beaches. Another advantage of living in Australia is that English is the first spoken language. So if you're looking to move here as a British person or maybe an American person, or if your native language is English, it's pretty easy because everyone already speaks English. Next up, there is so much to explore. I feel like I live near so many cool things. Like I have Sydney down the road, the Blue Mountains, more of the coast. So like every weekend there's always something different to do, a new hike to do, a new beach to see. It's just endless. And that is why I feel like I'm always on holiday, because I'm always doing things. Next up, healthcare is really good. There is a low crime rate and generally I felt extremely safe at night, really early in the morning. Like compared to in England, I don't feel that safe in certain places, but in Australia, I feel really safe. And lastly, the coffee is just amazing. This year on my YouTube channel, I'm just going to be focusing on Australia. There is so much to see, so much to explore. If you're thinking about moving to Australia and you're just a bit unsure, this next series is really going to help you out. I am making a series that is all about how to move to Australia. All the things you need to know, from taxes to how to find work, to how to find accommodation, how to make friends, all that stuff. We're going to cover those over the next few months, so make sure you hit subscribe down below. We also have some exciting adventures coming up through Western Australia, Northern Territory. I am so excited to go to all these places this year and show you guys on the channel. And hopefully that can inspire you to take a trip, heck, take a trip to Australia, maybe even move here on a working holiday visa, because why not? So this video sums up my first year living down under in Australia. It's been an amazing one. And I just want to say, if you have ever had that inkling in your head, like I've always wanted to move to Australia, just do it, because you don't know what's going to happen. You could get the coolest job ever. You could meet the love of your life. You could have the coolest road trip. Like, just do it. Like, what have you got to lose? If you take away one thing from my video, take away this phrase. If I move to Australia or I go and travel and I don't like it, I can go home. I can go back to where I'm from. I can live the old life I was living, that's fine. But what you can't do is you can't sit there and imagine, like, what will it be like to move to Australia? What would it be like to have all these cool adventures? Because you just got to do it to find out and see where that journey takes you. Let me know in the comments down below. Have you moved to Australia? Would you like to move to Australia? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I really appreciate the continued support on my YouTube channel. If you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe down below. We're kicking off next week with a new series all about how to move to Oz. So if you want to find a job in Australia, make sure you hit subscribe. So until next time, take care and peace out.